So today I'm going to discuss the differences between the Catholic/Protestant countries and the Orthodox countries, and how this greatly impacts their culture, the way they view gender relations, and so on. So regarding this topic, I am an interesting case study because, as you can see from the brand of English accent that I have, it's obviously Australian, so I am a dual Greek Australian citizen, born in Melbourne, Australia. I did primary school there, and then at 12 years old the family moved to Greece, and I lived in Athens, Greece. I did the entirety of my high school there, and I stayed a few more years after I finished high school. Then I went back to Melbourne in my early 20s to go to university and so on, to just do my hero's journey as a young man, I guess. And I subsequently came back to Greece, to Europe, and I'm here now the past 5 years or so. So I'm a mix of both cultures. Like I've seen the life, how life is in a Catholic Christian country, Catholic white nation, predominantly Catholic, or I don't know if it's predominantly. They might be Church of England or Anglican. I don't know. I don't even care in Australia, but you know what I'm saying. Like Anglosphere, it was like the split. About 1,000 years ago, there was a split between the Western and the Eastern Roman Empire, and the Western side on the left was Catholic, and the other side, where the Byzantine Empire, which turned into the Byzantine Empire, became what we now call the Orthodox. And Orthodox in Greek, it's a Greek word, so the etymology pretty much means the correct faith, right? So the Orthodox people, we believe that, I'm Orthodox on paper. I'm not strictly religious. I'm not an atheist. I'm not an antichrist or anything like that. But I've had my issues. When I was younger, I rebelled, you could say. But I then had personal Gnostic experiences that proves to me that pretty much the Bible is not lying, the New Testament is not lying to us, technically, right? Okay, so while I'm not full-on religious, I do know about it, okay? I'm steeped into this Greek Orthodox culture, okay? Like everything, it has its pros and cons, but I know a lot about it. But also, I've lived more of my adult life, technically, and just a bigger chunk of my life in general, in the Anglosphere, in Melbourne, Australia. Unfortunately, because it's one of the most communist cities on earth. But it doesn't present itself as such. Some fake news magazine kept saying for many years in a row, a while back, for some magical reason they were just pronouncing that Melbourne was the most livable city on earth. It's just a magazine. That particular magazine was deciding that was the case. I don't know if they believed in their own BS because they'd never travelled outside of Melbourne, so it's like a fish not being out of water and not knowing that where they are is one of the worst cities in all of history. I don't know. But anyway, I was there. So whether I liked it or not, I also got steeped into that side of things. So I'm the perfect case study of somebody who's seen both. Okay? Sort of caught in between the Eastern, the Western and Eastern Roman Empire, and having seen how things are on the ground, you know, not just by reading about it, or, you know, not secondhand information, like, you know, a friend of mine or somebody telling me, or reading about it, or watching a YouTube video, you know, like so many people today, they just think they know everything because they watched a YouTube video on a topic. But I've seen it, and I've been thinking about talking about this for a while, for a long time now, but I've been so busy finishing my various writing projects the past several years, where I'm only just starting to get back into, you know, being regular and productive with my YouTube uploads on both my channels. So what I have, the number one thing I've noticed regarding the difference between these two, possibly you can say they are, it's like a yin and yang. I mean, the Europeans, the Western culture in general, European civilization is of a yang nature, of a masculine nature, like energetically, mentally, behaviorally, okay? Well, those of you who understand, you know, the meaning of yin and yang, and that they are energies and modes of behavior and thinking, European culture is fully yang, okay, masculine, okay, more so than any other, all right? But you can further subdivide it into the yin and yang aspects, all right? I mean, you won't have to call it yin and yang, call it whatever you want, just say that it's two sides of the same coin, the European coin. One side, which is the Eastern Orthodox, is definitely just indisputably, 100% definitely, there you go, I said definitely 3 times, indisputably more patriarchal, you could say. I mean, what is patriarchal? Like I said in a recent video, in my first reaction to Andrew Wilson clip, patriarchy is a fake word. It's just, I mean, it's not a fake word, but the term is fake. I mean, it's designed to mislead. Patriarchy is just how reality functions, okay? And some evil Marxist people that wanted to upturn reality decided that they'll, you know, cook up this trick, this psyop, to convince a lot of the population that patriarchy is a social construct, and therefore we have to smash it, when in reality what they're really doing is just smashing reality itself, okay? Like objective reality. Reality is just, it's hierarchical. Everywhere you go in nature, you'll see this. Mankind is like a marriage between, a combination of beasts and angels, okay, you could say. We're kind of like animals only have instincts, okay? They only work on the reptilian brain, whereas humans have both, okay? We have our lower needs and the higher, like we're the only animal that can think, okay? At least to this extent, you know, other ones can probably partially do it, like the dolphins are very intelligent, for example. But, you know, overall, we are unique. Okay, we are unique in that we still have the hardware. Okay, our biology is of the animal kingdom. Of course, like I said, we are like a combination of animal and angel, you could say. I mean, that's one way of putting it, or spirit, or whatever, or higher self. All right, a New Age term. And a lot of people think, well, okay, we can overcome the animal nature. We don't have to go on this Darwinian model of dog eat dog and everything's hierarchical and may the best man win and no one except the winner can get the golden medal and all the gold medal and all this. But trying to go against this, it looks like it always invites disaster, okay? So basically, if you keep going against natural law, against the way things are, things don't work. Okay, you invite disaster, you make things worse, and whatever it is you're doing, whatever little equality experiment like they did in the USSR, eventually, whatever it was, 20 to 90, 70 years later, approximately, it imploded. Okay, Americans didn't even, Reagan didn't even have to do anything. USSR just destroyed itself from within, because it was based on things that are like, it was all the ideologies and everything were going against the natural current, okay, against nature, against natural law and truth. So this thing that a lot of people today disparagingly call the patriarchy, as if to say that men are not designed to be leaders, is just an attempt to deconstruct reality. Really, it's just a word trick. Okay, they're just mind games, word games that the social engineers, the black magicians, play on us. Black magicians. When I say black magicians, I mean the people that, the Edward Bernays type of characters, not literally evoking like Darth Sidious or Sauron type of things, although that might exist also behind the scenes, or real life versions of that kind of thing. But this is not that type of video or that type of channel, really. So we've established, I mean, at least in my mind, in my experience, and I'm not crazy or deranged, so from what I'm seeing with my own eyes, with my 5 senses, all my life, in my nearly 50 years of being alive, I'm 49, I see that this pyramidal hierarchical competence hierarchy, meritocracy-based system is not a social construct created by men to keep white men to keep everybody down. It just is. And the phrase "may the best man win" is not an accident. They didn't say "may the best person win." Okay, because nature designed us that way. It's no accident that we have, on average, from 15 to up to 20 times more testosterone than females, etc. And our strength, our muscles, our upper body strength, all these things. Men tend to be more logical. The fact that we have more testosterone and just our hormonal makeup in general makes it that we are overall much more reliable in highly stressful situations where we could cause a lot of harm if we snap, like if you're responsible for a lot of people's lives, for example, like having a high-ranking military man or something like this, or a president and so on, or like a captain of a big ship, like captain of the Titanic, so on, airline pilot, those types of things. Nature has built the male in such a way that we're designed for those types of situations. That's why throughout history you tend to find more men, a much larger percentage of men in those elite positions, which are also high pressure and high pressure, high responsibility, and so on. I'm not saying that there are not that no women can do these jobs, but in the aggregate, you find time and again that it's more often the case that it's men that end up in these positions, and it's just because nature has designed us in such a way. So that's really the slanderous term patriarchy is just designed as a buzzword, as a trick, as a word trick, mind trick, whatever, word sorcery, okay, call it that, to trick millions of people into thinking that I described in the past couple of minutes is somehow some false overlay on top of the natural. I mean, it is the natural order, what I just described. It's just how males are in all of the entire animal kingdom. not just in Homo sapiens. All right, so that, I think that puts that to rest. All right, the question of whether patriarchy is a bad thing or whatever, it doesn't even, it's just the natural order of things is like that, and it's nature. Okay, God made it that way. Otherwise, it would not have applied in all the other animals as well, right? We wouldn't have been seeing the same exact pattern in the jungle, all right? So, the animal kingdom. So, I've been wondering for a long time, because I've lived both, like I said, I've lived both in the in Western Europe environment, which is in the Anglosphere in Australia, and in Greece, all right? And the difference in certain areas, not like most, overall it's not that different, because I mean it's European. I mean there's a lot of those Nordicist retards sometimes like to say, well, Greeks are not white. So what are we? The fuck are we? Chinese? Black? They're so retarded, people that even think that. If they say it, they're doubly retarded. If you think it, maybe you can, you can be excused somewhat. So anyway, so it's Europeans, right? Indo-Europeans, whatever you want to call it. Even the name Europe comes from a Greek word, so case closed. But there's a massive difference in certain areas. You could say that we're like 90% the same, but that 10% difference is in the fact that the Eastern Orthodox cultures, I mean Russia included, Russians, Albanians, and so on, whatever, Armenians, all the cultures that are Christian but not Catholic, like the Eastern Orthodox, wherever the Eastern Orthodox is the majority religion, those countries, they all see, there seems to be a through line where everyone, and the women included, the very important thing to note about this, to point out, is that even in the vast majority of women, whether they're young or old, even if they're like younger generation, like in their 20s or 30s, they just accept what I described 5 minutes ago about the nature of just the patriarchy just being it's just reality. It's just how reality works. Cat's going crazy again. It's just the norm. Okay, by default, people just understand how reality works in that sense. Now, so that's why it troubled me so much, to the point where the cognitive dissonance sometimes, depending on what kind of crazy feminist, whether it was a male or female, females are more prone to be feminists, but even a lot of men in the Anglosphere have feminist views because they've seeped in, because, through osmosis, because they're living in this environment where it's like 24/7, 365, future is female, men are terrible, women can do no wrong, all this, from the day they're born, from the second they're born, and then they go to school, they go to primary school, and all the messaging, all the fake news on the TV and the movies they watch, it's just never ends. And mind you, these are the first cultures ever where feminism and the female vote sprang up. I believe it was New Zealand. Was the first country ever where they gave the vote to women. And I don't know whether it was the USA or England where the first serious feminist movements happened. But either way, all of them are like. I just did some damage control with the cat there. There's my cat in the room. It's like running around. You can't see it in the camera, but it's having one of those moments where it's going crazy. So, and I was like, I went back to Australia, thinking I was going back to the promised land, because I had done primary school there, and then they ripped me out of the womb of the quiet, nice, polite Melbourne, at 12 years old at the end, when I finished primary school, and they just airdropped me in Athens, Greece. So I'm like, what is this? But then I got used to it here in Athens. I loved it. Within a year or two, I loved it. But I always missed Melbourne. I wanted to go back, and I go back at 21. I'm like thinking that I'm coming back to the promised land. And I very quickly realized, I'm like, what the hell is this shit? Why didn't anyone tell me that a place can actually be so bad? Because you have to actually see it, like coming from a based country like Greece. Because let's face it, that's an objective statement, if there ever was one. Right? So, being so based here, like where people just don't buy any government propaganda, men just don't give a shit about the feminist messaging. Even women understand that men and women are different. Some of you, a lot of the Americans listening might not be able to put this in context. I'll give you because it's more likely that you've probably met like a Eastern European or Russian woman or something, rather than a Greek. So picture it like that same attitude that Russian women have, like you see, I think there was a Russian lady, slightly older, like in her 40s or something, maybe early 50s. I recently saw a clip on on the Whatever podcast, and it was like a bunch of women, like a dozen girls there on the table, and they were talking completely insane nonsense, literally insane, like the very definition of insane, like saying things that are completely anti-reality, basically, because that's what feminism does to a person. And this lady, it came her turn to reply to them. And she gave them a piece of her mind, in her super cool accent. She was like, and this blah 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 blah, and this shouldn't be like this, and I'm embarrassed to call myself a woman when I look at you doing all this, like she put them in their place, and I'm thinking, yes, this is a real woman. So that is pretty much the standard with Greek women, with Russian women, with whatever, Ukrainian, whatever of these white countries, or countries that, or in any case, countries that are definitely not African or Chinese or Middle Eastern. I mean, what else would you classify them as? Okay, that are Christian, but Orthodox Christian. All across the board, they pretty much, men and women both, young and old both, have that same type of archetype. They're that same kind of template / archetype as those based Eastern European / Russian ladies who would just, like you see them even on the street interviews and stuff, or like a couple of times I've seen some of them, on Fresh and Fit, and they're like the voice in the wilderness. They're like a singular logical voice, like in a sea of insanity. All these other women, like Anglosphere chicks, they're all these American girls. And I'm thinking, what is this? And for years and years, when I was in Melbourne, and mind you, I'm 49, so I'm talking, what is that? 27, 28 years ago when I went back to Melbourne. At 21, it was like, what was it, like November 96, believe it or not. Some of you that are younger will be like, Jesus, I was a baby then, or I wasn't born yet. But yeah, it was then. So it wasn't that bad, but because Melbourne is like the ultimate kryptonite to based, it was really fucked up even from back then. So can you imagine how bad it's gotten? But like even from back then, you could see the communism seeping through. They couldn't hide it. Like they were trying to hide it under the rug, but it was just like, imagine having this rug where you put so much crap underneath, where it's like there's a bump, and you're walking on it, and it's like a speed bump type of thing almost, and you're like, what is this? What have you got something under this rug, like a basketball or something? So you can't. It was impossible not to see it. Having spent the entirety of my teenage years in, okay, I'm biased, obviously, okay, trigger warning. I was about to say, the most based city of all time, Athens, okay? Because if you see it, you can't unsee it. What I've seen in Athens. I'm biased, of course, because it's in my DNA to resonate with this place even more than other people would, than non-Greeks. But I think it's objectively the case, because like we have the highest percentage of protesting and stuff like that. Maybe not so much now, because the Greek spirit has been broken after the financial crisis about 20 years ago. But back in the day, when I was here in Athens as a teenager, every second day, protests in the streets, people, you know, this union, that union, you know, the truckers, the farmers, the this, the that, the bank tellers. Every Tom, Dick and Harry was constantly complaining, going out in the streets and, you know, making their case to the government. And there was just like massive strikes, just mass strikes for days on end, till they got the demands met, or till at the very least, you know, till the government actually heard what they had to say, right? But you go back to Melbourne, the early 20s, and you're like, why is no one protesting? Why are these people the biggest fucking sheep / NPCs I've ever seen in my short life? Like, the comparison was staggering. It was shocking, it was scary. So, and this is not, oh, you're anti-Australian, mate. That's all Australian to say that. Well, it's kind of like when someone complains about the legitimate, insane points of feminism and is called a misogynist. So I'm just anti-reality, okay? I'm not anti anyone. I mean, if you say logical things and behave logically and behave according to natural law and everything, I'm not going to complain. Okay, but so many people are just wrong and fucked up and stupid, so, you know, 95% of the time you're forced to criticize, all right? So one of these cases is Melbourne. I'm hyperbolic, I'm exaggerating, but when I say it's the worst thing ever, but definitely it would be in the top 5 worst Western cities to live in. As a man, I mean, maybe a beta male, a blue-pilled male, or a woman, or some feminist chick in Australia, some Anglo feminist, you know, a woman of Anglo background, feminist, she'll be like, oh yeah, it's great here because, you know, the government helped me when I broke up with my man and helped me bring up my child, and without it I wouldn't have done all this blue-pilled left communist shit. For someone like that, it's great, but I didn't like it. So what I saw when I went there, when I went back, it started to dawn on me, you know, after like the first year and the second year, when my enthusiasm started to wane. I'm like, wait a minute, this keeps happening again and again, over and over. So I'm like, all right, I'm seeing a pattern here. It's just how this place is. I need to either get used to it or whatever, you know. Like, there was no way out. I had to, you know, I had to say to myself, look, this is just how it is, accept it. These, you know, like I said before at the start, like the European cultures are pretty much the same thing, like it's the same, overall the same tribe, the Indo-Europeans, right? But just these slight little cultural differences. But in this particular case, the fact that in a place like Melbourne, and like I said, in general, it's like the Catholic, the Western European countries, you know, the countries that became, that broke away from the Byzantine Empire, which were, you know, Germany and so on, you know, Germany, the UK, and all these places that are, countries that are, France as well, that would be considered as being the West today. There, like I said, there is like a common thread running through them where, and I couldn't understand this for the longest time as to the why, okay? Why it was that they're just more matriarchal, you could say. I mean, I was yelling at the patriarchy word before, saying that it's like a fake concept trying to convince us that reality is a social construct. The hierarchical nature of reality is like something that's been imposed on everyone by force, by masculine force. I mean, there's elements of that, but really it's just the nature of the world, right? Matriarchal. All right. So, in case people might, just so that people won't, accuse me of, oh well, you're being hypocritical because you don't like the word patriarchy, but you're using matriarchy. All right. Gynocratic, let's say, gynocracy. Okay, where women always have the final say. Everything, the entirety of society defers to women. Okay, and all the men, whatever they're doing, they're basically doing it for the benefit of women. At the end of the day, that basically is a gynocratic society. So the Anglosphere with the Western Europe. Okay, because I don't want to just say Anglosphere because it's also Germany and Sweden and places like that are part of the Western, the Catholic European powers, the West. Okay, so all these countries, with the exception of the U.S., which is very masculine for some reason, there is a strong feminization, and I couldn't understand it for the longest time. I'm like, what is going on here? Why is it? Why do these people not understand reality? Like, I understand that there's this counter argument that could easily come up and say, look, you're saying that the patriarchal model is just reality. It's just by default that's how things should be, and you get offended and you don't like it and you get triggered when people complain about the patriarchy and blah blah blah. Yes, I do. But their argument, to continue on that, the person's argument, the counterpoint would be, and yet you're complaining when, as in me, you're complaining about a society being mostly female-led. So why would it, and they would say, why would I, this hypothetical debater would ask of me, so is this because it just suits, let me just adjust the aircon here, I'm going crazy, it's so hot. Would you, they would say, well, are you pro-patriarchy or saying that patriarchy is just a natural order of things under a different name? Because it suits you as a man. Yes, it does suit me as a man, but the fact of the matter is that we have the stats. We've done this experiment for 100 years now with the feminism across the West, and we've seen that it doesn't work. Women are less happy than they've ever been. The stats prove this. The birth rates, like we're approaching extinction level birth rates. Practically, almost half the homes are single parent households, which really is a euphemism for single mother households. Because how many households are going to be single father? 5% out of the single parent households might be just single fathers, 5 or 10%. I'm just arbitrarily making up that stat, but it would be something like that. 1 out of 10 would be the fathers. That 90% of cases the woman would take the children, and a lot of the time maybe it's true that men don't want to have the responsibilities of the kids, because we're not designed for that. Okay, we're designed for what comes later, like in the teenage years, for teaching the child how to live, teaching the harsh realities of life. Like the mother's job is from 0 to 12 roughly, and the father's responsibilities go from 12 to 20 roughly, or 18, whatever you want to say. Okay, so anyway, I don't want to get off track now, but the point is, I tried for years to understand why on earth this disparity. Why do these Western nations do not understand? Why don't they understand reality in this regard? And you always see like the based Russian people women especially, because it's astounding when you see a woman actually speaking logically about the, you know, and saying things like, well, you know, men and women have different roles, and we know this as Russian women. And you're like, what? I've never heard this before. Like, if it's someone who's lived in a Western nation all his life, a man, he'll be like, what? There's women that actually think this way? Yes, they're everywhere. It's just that they're not in the Western nations, all right? Well, there's very, very few of them in Western nations, and even if there are some good ones, like the Pearl Davis types, they will still have some residual Western country, Western Catholic / Protestant country feminism in them without even realizing, because it seeps in through osmosis. Now, what is the origin of this? First of all, it seems to be that, and I haven't got the dates here, I mean, this channel is still very small. I don't know if anyone will, of the few people that might watch this, if anyone's interested, you can comment underneath and request me to make a more detailed video on this. But I haven't got all the information. I haven't researched this in depth. But you know, so I don't know the dates of when it started. But the chivalry movement, that was primarily in Britain, okay, and other parts of Europe, but it was like a British Isles thing, okay, like the knights showing courtly love to the women and so on. This Romeo and Juliet shit, okay. This is exclusively a Western European thing. How it came about is a massive rabbit hole, and you know, if I have to, I'll, you know, if I want to, whatever, if it ends up that way, I'll make more extended videos about this. But the point is, it all started from there. That's one. That's the basic trunk, okay, in this tree of this feminized West. Another main branch, another massive branch of this, the second most important, is Protestantism. Okay, now, from what I know about the Catholic faith, it's very patriarchal. It's very big on, I mean, the popularization of natural law, of, you know, running a society, you know, formulating our laws, living our lives according to natural law, is a Catholic thing, okay? So that's also, obviously, so if Catholicism is responsible for something like that, it means that it is very much in line with the natural order of things. Like, you know, like they have the, what's it called? I don't remember the term, but like the cosmic hierarchy or something. It's something like that. It's like God, man, woman, child, beast, plant kingdom, you know. That's the hierarchy, and that's a Catholic Church. That was the Catholic Church doctrine, and still is, I believe. Now, the Protestants, although a lot of people think that the Protestant Reformation was a great thing, and it was like they make very positive associations with Protestantism, a lot of people. And I used to think that it was good because it was a revolutionary thing that went against the monolithic control, the totalitarian, supposedly, control of the Catholic Church. But I recently came to understand that it's not at all a good thing, because they just, with the Protestants, there are almost no boundaries, okay? Because you need to have rules and boundaries, okay? That's the masculine impulse, okay? To say no. order, to be strict. It's the father. It's the father saying no. It's like, do your homework. Stop eating. You had 2 or 3 cookies. You're not going to eat the entire packet, 20 cookies or whatever. Like, go to sleep. Don't stay up all night playing video games, or do your homework, whatever. Don't be a punk. Don't be a hoe if it's the daughter. Okay, that's a masculine, and we need that discipline and rules and boundaries. So the Catholic Church had that in spades. The Orthodox Church still has that. Okay. Now Protestantism, which became a massive thing, it grew like a virus. It couldn't be stopped. The Jesuits tried to rein it in with the Counter-Reformation. I mean, but that's for another video, definitely. But the 2 main things are this chivalry BS, and then after that, or whatever the dates are exactly, because like I said, I haven't got the exact dates of when exactly the chivalry movement began back in the day, particularly in the UK. But those 2 things combined were uniquely Western things. They never took root. They were never they never entered basically in the Eastern Roman Empire universe. Okay, they were completely alien concepts. Okay, Protestantism and this chivalry, this knightly, courtly love, that type of thing. Okay, now this courtly love thing eventually morphed into worshipping the feminine to the point where, without even realizing it, particularly the Anglosphere, and to a lesser extent, although still a great extent, but just lesser than the completely retarded Anglosphere, retarded in that aspect only, of course, because they are, the UK basically created the modern world. I mean, no one denies that. But they are very, in a very bad way. Like it's like they really severely messed up in this particular aspect. So what it's done, like over like many centuries, it's created this template, this vibe. I mean, you can call it like an OS, like an operating system. Okay, it's like the matrix software that people run on in these societies, and if they're genetically also, from there, and they're not just immigrants, and they're like people that actually have that are genetically like Northern European / Anglos and Celts. I mean, it literally runs in their blood for many generations of the men and the women just having that mindset. So aside from the fact that through osmosis you're constantly getting this messaging when you're living in societies like that, like from the day you're born, constantly. Aside from that, it's also genetically encoded in you to be that way. So there's no escape if you're born into these cultures and you've never really traveled also, or had more red-pilled, awake friends to snap you the fuck out of it. You're completely lost. You're thinking, you're listening to me now and saying, what the hell, what is he talking about? But I thought equality was a good... These are the types of people I'm talking about when they think that when I'm saying that Melbourne is a matriarchal shithole that's very damaging mentally, energetically, spiritually, emotionally to men in general, men and boys. The type of person that would respond, that would immediately have a knee-jerk response and say, "Are you against equality?" These are the types of people. That's the kind of people, like the normies in these Western European cultures / Anglosphere. That's the average person in those places, the men included, especially the men. It's probably more so the men. The men are worse because they're the ones that keep these structures in place. I mean, if they were based enough, they would say no. They'd just put their foot down and say, no, fuck this. We're not giving you the vote. We're not giving you all these. What do you mean 50-50 parity in politics? What the fuck are you talking about? Why? Literally why? Because you think that if it's 51-49, there's some kind of patriarchal conspiracy. What? Men are designed to rule hierarchical structures, and the more high-powered and stressful and high responsibility a job is, the more it's suited to the masculine type of thinking and behavior. Who doesn't know this? Do you need me to make this video to tell? Do you need Andrew Tate and Andrew Wilson and what? So what you're seeing now, this is a real life product of a person that's been steeped into the Eastern Orthodox operating system, okay, software you could say. So that's the software I've got downloaded in my brain, and it's normal. It's superior. It's like I'm like a Mac, okay. You're like cheap imitation, because it's like there's no way that what I'm saying here is not factually true. I mean, you look at nature. Look at how nature operates. There's the lion. There's always the king. It's always a male. All right. So because we're so clever and we're humans, oh no, we won't have any of that. We're gonna upturn this, and we're gonna go against nature, and we're gonna socially engineer humanity into our own image of this socialist, egalitarian, non-existent thing that's impossible. It's good in theory. It's not even good in theory, but it looks good on paper sometimes. At first glance, you're like, oh, this sounds good. And then when you think about it, you're like, no, it doesn't actually, because then everyone's going to be reduced to the lowest common denominator, and everything crumbles like the USSR in 1989. If you enjoy the content of this channel, then there's a good chance you'll also like my fantasy book, Lifting the Curse Volume 1, Guardian of the Magic. Set in the modern day, it's full of action, fantasy, and page-turning conspiracy thriller. It even has numerous references to real-life geopolitical events and conspiracy theories, including a somewhat prophetic mention of the current 2025 Iran-Israel conflict. So, although there's a lot of red pilling happening across the Anglosphere and the Western European nations in general, there's a long way to go still. I mean, I don't know, this is an arbitrary percentage. It might be like 10-20% of men that are awake to the facts that I'm speaking here. But the rest of them are like, what is this hateful rhetoric? Why are you saying... When they say hateful rhetoric, it's like translation underneath, in the parentheses, it's like, the true meaning of this, is objective facts. So when you say objective facts about reality, it's like, oh, that's hateful rhetoric. Because, and also, probably a third branch in this, in this tree of blue pilldom in these countries, these Western countries, is the postmodernism thing and the subjectivism thing, because they're kind of interrelated. That the postmodern slash subjectivism, it's more or less the same. They're like cousin ideologies, okay? So it's this belief that nothing is real unless we make it real, and whoever has the power, you know, the kind of stuff that Jordan Peterson talked about before he was infected by a particular mind virus from the Middle East. So this is the thing about why these countries are much more susceptible to ideas that say that, oh, you know, there's no gender really, it's all fluid, it's all this and that, you know, a woman can be a man, like can do things a man can do if she really tries. It's just, you know, the glass ceiling and all this shit. Glass ceiling. You know, when I was at the gym the other day and I saw a guy deadlifting 300 kilos, and the woman tried to do it and she couldn't. That's not a glass ceiling. That's God made her that way. Okay, that's not a real example, but I'm just saying. But it could be, okay, if you really tried to replicate that scenario, you would find that 99.99% of women would not be able to lift that. Is that a glass ceiling? Is some guy at the gym oppressing her, not letting her lift that weight? Okay, so we're fundamentally different in terms of the way we think, the way we handle life. We have sexual dimorphism, you know, women are like wide in the hips, men are wide in the shoulders, okay, we have that V thing, women have the hourglass, like everything is so, like we're hard, we're muscly, we've got hair everywhere. Women don't. They're soft to the touch, they're round. It's like the hourglass figure, like everything is different. We have deep voices, they don't. If a woman does have a deep voice like a man, it's not going to be sexually attracted to a man. We'll find it creepy and we'll just recoil. We're like, whoa, why is she talking like that? And if a man is talking like this, you know, a woman will be like, what? This is a grown man talking like a 10-year-old boy? What's wrong with it? So, fundamentally different. But because in these cultures that we have, the chivalry thing, the courtly love, which caught on, I don't know when. I think I've read things to the tune of maybe even as far back as the 1200s, the 1300s. Slowly, there were some queens that were in influential positions and started promoting this idea because they wanted to, you know, girl power. Because women, it's not a recent phenomenon, always when they have an influential position, they're always trying to push their own thing. It's just that now it's the past 100 years it's been done to the point where they've overcorrected 50 times over, and it's still like there's more needs to be done because, you know, in the parliament there's like 335 men but 334 women. That, you know, that like 0.01% difference, that's a glass ceiling, you see. It's completely insane and retarded, but this is how a lot of these people think in these countries. So there's a courtly love, and that's the first thing. I think that was the oldest one. Like I'm you know, correct me if I'm wrong, and I will check later to see if the dates are correct. But as far back as the 1200s or 1300s. But in any case, it wasn't like the 17 or 1800s. It was like maybe, if it like the most recent it could have been, maybe it was the 1500s, something like that. But around there. And that gradually over the centuries, it seeped in to the culture, particularly in the British, and then also in the Northern Europe. Maybe that courtly love, that you know, that the knight kneeling before my lady and all this stuff. maybe it was prevalent everywhere, you know, in the Germanic areas and so on. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know 1,000% that it was in the UK, the British Isles, right? Which is really where the evil begins. Like, I mean, you could say that London is the center of both the greatest things that have happened in the past several hundred years, like because they created the modern world, but the other side of the coin is like the worst things that have ever happened in the world in the past few centuries also are from there. It's pretty much like the London, you know, the city of London especially, like where the Bank of England is, the financial center. That's like the New World Order, the cabal headquarters. Come on, I mean, everyone knows that. Even my cat knows, and she can't speak English because she's a Greek cat. But seriously, the courtly love, that had a massive role, much bigger than we realize, in seeping into all the structures of society, okay? And it just became a default thing. Like, eventually, like a man, like if this thing starts in the 1500s or 1400s, and then by 1950, the average British man will be like, oh, of course, my lady, I want you to have 50-50 parity in Parliament. Why wouldn't I? I'm all for human rights and all the, like, he wouldn't have been saying that same thing 500 years before that. And, you know, a Greek or a Russian man wouldn't even say something insane like that even now in 2025. Why would you, like, I want someone to explain to me why we need exact parity in every profession that exists and that has ever existed and ever will exist. Why do we need this 50-50 thing? Why? It doesn't exist anywhere. Why are most nurses female? Why are most engineers men? You know, like, it's just they have different, men and women have different preferences. This 50-50 thing, it just doesn't make sense. And they only go for positions where it gives them power. Like they're going for the politics and stuff like that. They don't want 50-50 parity in digging ditches, do they? Because that like, it doesn't help with securing your voting, you know, your right to bodily autonomy to kill unborn babies. So it's hilarious how these people think and how the people in these countries, so-called countries, I mean, it's not a country if it doesn't run, you know, if it's the law of the land and its customs and so on, and behavior, and particularly female behavior, if it's not based on natural law, which is to say, on the way reality actually functions. So you can't be a country if you're going against the flow of reality. Like the river's going that way, and you're trying to go the opposite. How is that a country? You're going to implode eventually, and self-destruct from within, or the barbarians are just going to come in and take you out, and you probably fucking deserve it. Because if you're retarded enough to go against the flow of nature, of what actually is, and you're going the opposite, I mean, it's like try jumping off a cliff, see, without a parachute, see how that works. It's like the equivalent of that, but it's more subtle. You know, you don't die immediately from falling to your death off a cliff, but it happens gradually, okay? It might take 50 or 100 years, like Rome. Rome didn't fall in a day. The decline was gradual. So that's why we're seeing all these problems that people talk about on the internet. Oh yeah, and I'm going to finish up on the other branches. The Protestantism thing, because it grew like a cancer at some point and it couldn't be stopped. Although the Catholic Church tried its best to stop it in the beginning, and also the Counter-Reformation, the Jesuits tried their best to do that. I mean, you know, I'm anti-Jesuit, but I'm just saying the history of it. But in any event, the thing is that it did become a big thing, and it's still very influential. And it was, particularly back in the day, when these Western European powers were at their height and they were expanding and so on, and they were like, and everyone, there was a lot more Eurocentrism than there is today, because everyone hates white people today. It's kind of like the equivalent of teenagers hating their parents for no reason. That was a big statement there. That was like just a tiny little phrase, but I can make an entire video series about that. I'll repeat it. All the other non-white races suddenly turning on white people in the past few years is the collective equivalent of a bratty teenager turning against his parents for no good reason. Make of that what you will, but that is actually, on a psychological level, what's happening. So, and it's not going to last, because the parent will be like, okay, you know, you violate my rules once, twice, thrice, out, you're out of the house, because I'm paying the bills here, it's my house, you're only a 15-year-old punk. You know, imagine trying to punch your dad or something when you have an argument. Dad would be like, okay, final straw, get the hell out. So that's exactly what's going to happen with white countries soon. Like, it's going to be like mass deportations if your number one loyalty is not to your adopted country. Go back to the blood and soil. Go back to where you came from, because we're already where we came from. I mean, in my case, Greek, okay, or the Irish, for example. I mean, I can't say this for America or Australia or something like that, because they're new countries and they're colonies. But the European people that we've been in our own lands for like 10,000 years, give or take. Where are we going to go? Okay, if we become minorities in our own ancestral lands, we have no Israel to flee to. That's it. It's all we've got. So anyway, but this is a parenthesis. So that the Protestant thing was very loose in its morals, in its interpretation of Catholic doctrine, and so on. And through that is where you get like lesbian bishops and things like that today. Okay, and then there was also Vatican II, which is another rabbit hole. I haven't researched that one that much because I'm not Catholic, but I know the basic bullet points. I don't want to get into it now because we're up to like 1 hour now. But because in their heyday, like when there was this big, like the days of colonialism, when British Empire was the number one thing, was the best thing on earth, and America was founded, and all these things, those days, that's when the Protestantism thing was also in full swing, okay? And again, like I said, that never took hold in Byzantine Empire, in places like Greece, Armenia, Russia, all those Christian countries, all those Eastern Orthodox Christian countries. So one could say that we maintained, we're much closer to the original. Oh my God, why is it so hot? We're way closer to the, basically, we understand natural law better. We just know reality. Okay, we don't have any of these BS ideologies that try to say, well, everything is sort of, you know, everything's fluid, man. There's really no men or women, or, you know, the hierarchy. What is that even? You know, it's just some guy that was powerful and he was a king, and he had all the king's men, and they went and bullied people and forced them to pay tax, and then glass ceilings didn't let women become scientists and stuff, you know. But now they've been free for about 100 years roughly, and still we have no major female inventors or philosophers. But don't worry, sweep that shit under the rug, because it doesn't suit us. When we actually have data in real time that proves to us that men and women are fundamentally different, yin and yang, like day and night, fire and water, sun and moon, solar and lunar, baby. So we seem to have, for some reason, just retained a grasp of objective reality in these Orthodox nations. And also a fourth point that I didn't mention, and the third one was, what was it? Oh yeah, that postmodernist crap that started in France. And also separation of church and state. A massive thing in the Western European nations is that they were very big, and I believe this started mainly in France. It was a French thing. Okay, after the French Revolution, it was the first proper, completely secular republic. That's another rabbit hole. That is another full-on satanic concept. What do you mean secular republic? You're trying to tell me God doesn't exist, and you're turning the state into God? That's really what that means. The translation of that, that's what that is, actually. When you dig deeper, that's what that means. It looks really cool in the beginning, and like, oh, that's so cute. It's so trendy. It's like they're not being controlled by the oppressive church and all this. But then when you go full circle and you grow up a little bit in your 30s or 40s, you're like, wait a minute. I don't want to be strictly religious. I'm not a Bible basher, but the great religions of the world were not really lying to us technically. Even the stuff Jesus did and everything, they're not lies, okay? Because it was proven later on with, I don't know if it was the Nag Hammadi or something else, I don't remember now, but there were documents that were found along those lines, similar to the Nag Hammadi story, where they found like the original versions of one of the Gospels, one of the major writings back in the day, and they dated it to back then, and it was either the original or one of the first few copies they'd made at that time, AD 60 or 70 or something. It's just off the top of my head. I haven't got all the details, but this is true. And it was worded exactly the same way as it is today in the Bibles, in the various Bibles. King James is my favorite translation, but there's all kinds of different ones. So they really like this BS leftist idea of a Gnosticism thing with like, oh, it's all fake, and they tried to they changed the scriptures to control us and stuff. Like, I understand that concept. Like, if you check out my other channel, which is on spiritual and occult stuff, my older channel, I could delve into all that stuff. I understand all these things about Gnosticism and the fact that organized religion is the devil, but it's not as bad of a devil as we make it out to be sometimes. Okay, there's good things about it, and the normies, the 80%ers, as I call them, they need some kind of structure. We can't have a society that's completely secular with no religion at all. So that's another thing. So that's the fourth thing, which is to say the separation of church and state, which primarily started in France after the French Revolution. So even that we don't have. We don't have that. We were not in the Orthodox nations. We were not infected by that. So those four things, recap: the courtly love, the knight in shining armor, like kneeling down to my lady and giving her a flower. That's like the ultimate, that's like taking simping like to Spinal Tap 11, that classic scene in Spinal Tap with their amplifiers, they've actually put an 11 on them so they can go louder. So there's that. There's a Protestantism which completely it was like throwing a Molotov cocktail in the standard Catholic doctrine. It was like, oh, anything goes, yeah, we can accept gay, lesbian, female priests and all that stuff. That's okay. They're all children of God. The rules that the fathers, that Peter laid down, they're kind of flexible, man. I'm kind of saying it in jest, but it's more or less that's what Protestantism is. So there's that. And then there's all this postmodernist crap, and critical theory probably fits in with that. You know, there's just this whole deconstructionism where they're like, you know, the whole Frankfurt School thing slash a lot of those French philosophers, you know, Derrida and all the ones that Jordan Peterson often criticizes, who started this postmodernism thing where it's like they're basically trying to tell us that we're in a post-truth world where objective reality doesn't necessarily exist and everything is based on language and all this stuff. And it's like the most dominant culture creates the template for what is accepted as being reality, but it's just a construct, a false construct. Because then if another culture took over, they would create their own norms, which would be different. So therefore, they're basically trying to tell us, in simpler terms, that there's no such thing as objective truth, which therefore means that there's no such thing as natural law and no laws of nature that we must adhere to, or else. Okay, so they're like, oh, you can just do whatever you want and everything's subjective and we can just make it up as we go, and all that matters is power, because whoever has the power, you know, it's good to be the king, like Mel Brooks said. So when you're the king, you have all the king's men, and then if people don't do what you want them to, you know, they don't do what you tell them to, you send your men and they rough them up or they kill them or whatever, and they threaten them, and then people listen to you and you're the king till the day you die, hopefully. So this is what these people, because I mean there were a lot of abuses by royals in Europe. I guess we have that trauma in Europe, in the European collective soul. So maybe that's why also these radical movements did start from Europe, because absolute monarchies maybe became absolutely corrupted in certain cases. Perhaps in France that was the case, perhaps not, but maybe there was the elements of that. So there's that. And the fourth one, like I said, that I mentioned just at the end before, because I was going to finish up, but I thought, you know, oh shit, there's also the separation of church and state. So those four, we never really got infected by those mind viruses in the Orthodox nations. Okay, so that's why we're based, you know, we're based as fuck here. You know, Russians, Greeks, we just get it. You know what I mean? Like, we get it. It's like I don't know if a lot of, and the men in particular, a lot of men, and I'm sorry if I'm coming across as, you know, being condescending or however you want to call it, but it's a genuine feeling that I have, a genuine thought. I'm like, dude, a lot of the men that are grown up in Western European nations and Anglospheric nations, do they really, like, are they listening to me now and saying, yeah, fuck yeah? Or is a big percentage of them, like about, you know, roughly half of them or whatever, a big chunk anyway, or are they like, yeah, I kind of see what you mean, but, you know, there's this thing about equality or something. Like, because I've had this conversation, like I've seen it. That's why I started the beginning of the video. I said, look, I'm the perfect case study to make a video like this, or whatever, to write a book or an article on it, because I've seen it, I've lived it, I've seen it live in both. Okay, and it's a massive, it's like day and night, the difference. It's like I've never met a single woman here in Greece that would say men and women are the same. Like, if I said that to a woman, the woman would call me retarded. Let me repeat that. If I presented that concept to a Greek woman of any age, whether she's 80 or 15, she would say, you're retarded. Sir, I'm sorry. What the hell are you talking about? Okay? But, you know, a lot of these Anglo-sphere women, there's something, you see, that's what I'm saying, like, it's almost genetic at this point. Sorry to say this, I know it sounds racialist or something, but it really is, and the way I explained it before, I think it makes sense, because, I mean, this program, this operating system, this mental software, mind virus, probably, because it's destructive mental software, therefore it's a mind virus, it's so baked in the Western European nations, but especially in the UK-based ones, the Anglo-spheric ones, it's practically in their DNA. So if a woman is like of Anglo background, you're almost certainly going to have a problematic situation on your hands. Like the percentage, the likelihood of her being just resonating to this feminist subjectivism thing where it's like, oh, you know, we can all be the same and blah blah blah. This crap, it's in there. It's literally in their DNA. So that's why you get all these, you know, white California Valley girls and whatever, and you look at them all white and blonde and stuff, all these white, that term, white liberal women. When we say white in America, okay, we could mean Italian American, we could mean Greek American, we could mean Armenian American, like the Kardashians or Anna Kasparian type of people, whatever. But 90% of the time, man, it's women that are called, you know, Anderson and Smith and stuff, you know, surnames. So it's like there's something to be said about the fact that all these ideas spring from the UK. Like that's the source of these things. All they, like I said, like there's the worst thing, the best things that have happened in the past 500 years roughly, and also the worst things that have come out in our current version of Western civilization, you know. So because these Anglosphere countries are pretty much majority populated by people of an Anglo background, men and women, it's pretty much genetically baked into them to have these ideas and behave in such a way which lends itself to creating matriarchal / gynocratic societies. And I'm like, why is this happening? I've tried for years to understand it, and I'm like, it all started from the UK because of, like I said, the four things I mentioned, like the 4 branches of this evil tree that creates anti-countries. But I mean, one of these branches is from, I mean, Protestantism didn't start in England, nor did the separation of church and state idea was primarily French. But the UK takes the largest share of the pie as far as creating these things, these ideologies. Like I said, the courtly love thing, that's primarily from there. It's a UK invention, really. So out of the 4 things mentioned, that's the worst one. The worst. When I say worst, it's like the most the most influential out of the 4 mind viruses that I've been detailing in this video. So that's why these cultures are fucked. That's why, compared to something like Russia or Greece, you'll be like, well, wait, why? What's wrong with these women? Why are they? And even the men, why are they putting up with it? Why are they deferring to the women, saying, oh, okay, yeah, sure, we'll give you the vote, and all this stuff, like all these things that would only happen in those countries and nowhere else. And you're like, what is this? And all this self-hatred, like, you know, like I said before, the trope of the white liberal woman, which is pretty much 90% of the time Anglo-Celtic background woman. It's not like I mean, well, okay, there's Robert D'Angelo, That's like an Italian name, but there's like most of the time it's just British background, and because that's where that courtly love shit began, and it seeped into the culture for many centuries, for like 500 years, give or take. And they're just, everyone that's from there, basically, genetically, more or less runs on that operating system. Whereas no one else, anywhere in the world, like literally anywhere else on the planet, no one else runs on such an operating system. There you go. That's why they are the only people that create such structures, which to the Eastern Orthodox places are like scratching our heads, like what? Literally, I mean, it's retarded. Retarded, I say, in the clinical sense, in the proper, like not in the colloquial, the way that people use it always on social media as a slur. Like retard means to slow down. It's like backwards, like less developed than the others. Okay, comparatively. So comparatively, it's very backwards. Having these attitude and running their societies in these ways. I mean, it doesn't work. Like I said before, like if you're going against the flow of reality, you're going against the current of reality, what do you think is going to happen? And everyone's saying, oh, look at the UK, London is not London anymore, like we've lost our culture. Oh, what's happening in America? Oh, these countries are becoming shitholes. Oh, gee, gosh, golly, I don't know why. I wonder why. It's like, it's just like saying, I've got the door open 24/7, and it's like in the middle of summer here in Greece. I don't know why the fucking apartment is full of flies. I can't figure it out. Okay? I haven't eaten in 3 days. I for the life of me, I can't understand why I'm weak and I can barely get out of bed, and I feel like I'm going to faint or something. Like they go against logic, and they're trying to figure out why. They're mystified as to why their countries are shitholes now, or turning into. Anyway, it's because if you got false foundations from the outset, you're going to self-destruct. So look at, okay, trigger warning, moment of Greek pride now, but if you must, you can disprove me in the comments. I'd like to see someone disprove this. The Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantium, was the longest lasting empire that we know of, like from 400 something AD or 300 something to 1450, like 1100 years. Like nothing lasted longer. Okay? What does that tell you? If something lasts longer than anything else that we've seen, that clearly shows that they knew how to run things. Okay? They didn't have feminism, they didn't have a bunch of things that the Western European countries have, and it lasted forever, okay? Because if you run it right, it's never going to fall, basically, okay? It's going to be the eternal empire, but it's not being done right. In anything that has sprung from the British Empire, and anything that's related to it, like the Germanic, like the North European nations, they are almost without exception, probably the only exception is America. That's why I'm very pro-America. I love America. It's like Greece and America. It's my two favorite places. I wish I was Greek-American, not Greek-Australian. So, all of these countries at this point, like you have Sweden, Germany, UK, Australia, Canada. Canada, there's another non-country. Freezing the truckers' bank accounts because they protested, because they didn't want to get a mandatory vax. How's that a country? There's no country. You've got no rights. You can't be a country if people have no rights. End of story. End of story, period. The end. It's not a country. It's a pretend country. It's a geographical location with houses and shops and schools and hospitals and stuff and roads. Yeah. It's not a country. It's just a place where houses and people exist and go to work and stuff. But it's not a nation, it's not a country. It's got no rights, how can it be a country? So none of these places are countries except for America. And the common denominator is that they're all of them, like I said, with the exception of America, because it has the First and Second Amendments, that's why. Otherwise that would be screwed as well by now. Are basically socialist shitholes. It doesn't seem so on the surface because they're kind of like it's a combination of socialism and they still like on a fiscal, on the economic front, they run on capitalism still. Okay, so it's a hybrid capitalist socialist model. So on the surface they look like they're proper masculine countries, but they're socialist shitholes really, because they're just welfare states and becoming more and more that. Okay, and plus the fact that the immigration is out of control and everything. All right, so these problems don't really exist in the Eastern Orthodox countries is what I'm saying, and I'll say it for the 10th time in this video. It's because we don't have that false OS, that operating system that the Anglo/Northern European cultures have, which is both their greatest strength but their greatest weakness. So their strength with the British Empire and the Germanic nations was their openness, high trust societies and so on. I'm not saying that, the Byzantine Empire was not high trust. You don't last for 1100 years if you're not doing things right. They were doing something right, those people. So is Russia. I mean, no one has been able to defeat Russia. They've tried to defeat them twice in the two world wars. They couldn't. They're trying again now. They never will. So that's how you know a nation's doing things right, when no one can defeat them. All right. So the fact that the UK has fallen abysmally now, it's just a testament to the fact that they did it wrong. They've done it wrong, because too much openness, if a society is too open, which means too feminine, as in, oh, we accept everybody, we're tolerant, we're this and that. So if you have too much tolerance, then intolerance will eventually win, because the more intolerant tribes that come in are gonna overcome your tolerance, okay? Because the more forceful person always wins out, okay? We're in the third dimension here. We're living in a bipolar world, which is to say, like, there's two poles, positive, negative, okay? Yin yang, light, dark. We're not in the fifth dimension of the age of Aquarius, like that song says, the age of Aquarius. That stuff is from my other channel. But even so, even if that stuff is real, in a sense, it doesn't mean that we're just going to sit here and be, oh, we love everyone. Everyone can come into our country. This civic nationalism bullshit. It's like, oh, as long as they follow our rules and they respect our constitution or whatever, we don't care. No, because every race has got a different operating system. Okay, they've got different software running, and it's not only their upbringing, it's also in their DNA. Over hundreds or even thousands of years, there's a particular pattern, and if it gets repeated over several generations, it eventually becomes baked in, and the child that's born, it automatically has those traits, where it gets to the point where you don't even have to bring them up in a certain way. Like me, like I'll be like, if I was adopted by Japanese, because they're metalheads and just awesome. If I was adopted by a Japanese family, I knew I was Greek, because you can tell by the look, but it's like, oh, but brought up by a Japanese family, that would be pretty awesome actually. But I would still have certain behaviors that would be intrinsically Greek, even if I had no contact with Greeks until I was 25. I still would have exhibited characteristically Greek behaviors, because it's been a particular tribe that's been behaving certain ways, has a certain culture and upbringing and so on for thousands of years, at some point it becomes part of your DNA and you're just born having certain traits. So it's at some point, particularly if a culture is very old, it's part of the hardware as well, as in the DNA and the software. But even if you didn't have the software, which is to say the upbringing, like the nurture, so the hardware is nature and the software is the nurture. If you have both, it's a twofer. You've got both. You've got 100% success. But even if you have the hardware, like the hardware, like the DNA, you will still behave in certain ways and so on. So it doesn't work. This multiculturalism thing as well, it's very big on multiculturalism, this Anglospheric experiment. I guess we could add like a fifth mind virus to the 4 things I mentioned before, so we can add multiculturalism in there. But the multiculturalism idea, yeah, I guess that's a different topic. That's for a different video. But yeah, I hope this explains. I have a tendency to go on and on. It's 90 minutes now. I hope it's not too long for you guys. But basically, this is a video I've been meaning to make for a long time, and I've finished my books now, and all the massive writing projects anyway. I'm not going to stop writing, but I finished a big chunk of the stuff I had to do. So now I'm focusing again a lot on YouTube from now on. So I've had this in the back of my mind for a long time to make this video. So I hope this sheds light on a perplexing issue that a lot of people in the world cannot understand. And they're like, why is it? Why are the Orthodox people just innately more based, even the women? Like, how, is it just religion? I don't get it. I was one of these people for years. I tried to figure it out. But I think that I've got a pretty good grasp of it now, and I hope I helped some people really understand what's going on with this thing. And hey, if you don't like it in the shitty Western European nations, come over. Come to Greece, move to Russia or something. It's far more based there. Trust me, you won't regret it. So I hope you enjoyed, and if you did and you got something out of it and you think a friend can be helped, please pass it along to a friend as well. And of course, like, subscribe, comment your thoughts underneath. Please be respectful, of course. And last but not least, as I always say, follow me on Twitter so we can continue the fun over there, because I love Twitter ever since Musk bought it. I'll see you soon.